Welcome to the Real Estate Deep Dive with Paul D. Garrison from JP and Associate Realtors. Today we're going to be discussing home ownership as a hedge against inflation. In particular, how during an inflationary period you want to be in a fixed monthly payment for a tangible asset that is outperforming inflation. We've all experienced the pressure on prices, whether it's at the gas pump or the grocery store. There's no doubt that we're experiencing inflation and the prices are rising. Well, home prices are not immune to it. They're continuing to rise, and now interest rates are starting to rise as well. But the beauty of a fixed rate mortgage is that it allows you to lock in lower interest rates that we're seeing today, thereby locking in the monthly principal and interest payments going forward in the future. That's a huge hedge against inflation and one that has performed well over time. Let's take a look at this quote by Mark Cusson, a financial writer for Investopedia. Real estate is one of the time-honored inflation hedges. It's a tangible asset, and those tend to hold their value when inflation reigns, unlike paper assets. More specifically, as prices rise, so do property values. So the question is, if you could go back in time to 2009 and purchase a home or two, would you? How would that purchase have performed for you? Probably pretty well, given the strong price appreciation we've seen since then. The fundamental drivers of house price appreciation we have seen over the last few years have been based on solid things like strong buyer demand caused by not only people's balance sheets, but also demographics, coupled with very, very low interest rates. So that helps explain why homes have done so well recently, but let's look at how they've performed versus the consumer price increases over the last 6 decades. So the blue bars are the average inflation rate for each decade, and the green bars are the average home price appreciation for the same period. We can see that in the 70s, which was the last time we've seen inflation as high as we are seeing today, that home price appreciation outperformed inflation 9.9% compared to 7.1%. It was a little more balanced in the 80s, with the inflation being just a hair higher, and then the home price appreciation comes back in the 90s. Now that we look into the 2000s, it was a very different market at that time than what we're seeing today. Lending standards were much looser, and home builders were building at an unprecedented rate. Even with the housing crisis that hit from 2008 and 2009, in which we saw home prices at the national level drop an average of about 19%, the average appreciation for the whole decade still outperformed inflation in the 2010s. And as you see, as we start to go into the 2020s, home appreciation really starts to outpace inflation. So no one's able to predict what future performance is going to be, but what we can do is look at past performance and understand the market fundamentals. I would recommend going back and watching some of my previous deep dives on why the current market is so different from the market that was back in 2008. The unprecedented inventory shortage that we're going through right now, the tighter lending standards, the strength of the equity that people have in their homes, and how that's going to play out in the market are all things that make this a very different market than what we were in the last housing crisis in 2008. So back to looking at homeownership as a hedge against inflation. Let's take a look at this quote from James Royal, Senior Wealth Management Reporter for Bankrate. A fixed rate mortgage allows you to maintain the biggest portion of your housing expense at the same payment. Sure, taxes will rise and other expenses may creep up, but your monthly housing payment remains the same. That's certainly not the case if you're renting. So the expression is everyone has to live somewhere. So your choices are pretty much renting or owning. As James points out, owning a home with a fixed rate mortgage really allows you to lock down the largest portion of your housing cost versus renting. Here's a graph that shows the annual rental increase has outperformed core inflation for much of the time period from 1973 to 2020. So I don't mean outperform in a good way. What it means is the percentage increase in rent each year, for the most part here, has actually been higher than what we've seen in the core inflation rate for that corresponding year. What this chart doesn't reflect is that the demand-supply imbalance that is not only affecting the home sales market is carrying over to the rental market as well. We're seeing rent rates increasing at a similar pace to as what we've seen home price appreciation increasing in this last year. Let's take a look at this quote from Forbes. It says that homeowners are shielded from mounting rental prices because their cost is fixed, regardless of what's happening in the market. Tangible assets like real estate get more valuable over time, which makes buying a home a good way to spend your money during inflationary times. And lastly, this quote from Ali Wolf, the chief economist at Zonda: "If you have cash and are expecting inflation, you want to think through where you can put your money so that it does not lose value." Housing is commonly looked at as a good inflation hedge, especially with interest rates so low. Many of the metrics and numbers in this presentation are based off of the national real estate market. However, local areas can vary. Please give me a call and we can discuss your situation. Have questions about your specific needs or location? Please contact me at 214-683-8188 or paul@pauldgarrison.com. Want more information about the housing market and related issues? Be sure and check out my blog at www.pauldgarrison.com. Thank you for your time. Please take a moment to visit our website at www.pauldgarrison.com.